Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the 4th episode of my landscape bed makeover. In this one, I'm going to be adding some grasses and low-growing perennial flowering things to this space. The first 3 episodes, I had prepped it, put in some annuals and space for annuals for color for the season. And in the last episode, I had put in some shrubs, which were mostly all just green things. In this episode, like I say, I'm going to do some perennials. Perennial is actually an interesting word in this business because the shrubs and the tree that are in that bed are perennial. Just the definition of perennial means you're putting it in there permanently. That's the purpose of a perennial, is to have it just stay there all the time. But in this business, we typically don't use the word perennial to represent the shrubs and the tree. We just kind of think, well, people know the tree is a perennial. And we reserve the word for things that look suspiciously like they may not be perennial. And that tends to be, if you have a perennial table somewhere, it's, you know, all the flowering, low herbaceous things. Herbaceous mean they die back to the pots. The things that look like they may or may not come back, that tends to be the things we cluster together and call perennial. And just assume that you know that the shrubs and the trees are perennials. Here's a few examples of things that we call perennial and how different they can be. Here's a hosta that the top of the plant dies to the ground. This is a herbaceous perennial. It's very much alive in this container and will pop up as soon as it warms up in the spring. Here's a ground cover phlox. This is actually native to large amounts of the eastern United States. Grows all the way up to zone 3. It actually becomes a little woody in the base over time, but we tend to put this in the perennial section. It's definitely perennial. It's actually evergreen, but we put it in the perennial section because I mean, it doesn't look like something that could be that tough, but it truly, truly is extremely tough plant. When you go to whatever garden center you go to in the spring, you'll see lots and lots of grasses, and some of them are actually annuals in your area in all likelihood. Lots of different super hardy grasses and lots of grasses that are just meant to go in containers for the summer or go in the ground and give you nice color for the summer. This Carex is definitely an exception to that. These are extremely cold hardy. This is one from the Southern Living plant collection, and I'm going to cover in detail a little later in the spring with lots of different varieties of these. These are really beautiful, and I'm going to include some of them in this perennial border today. Here's a couple examples of perennials that don't go to sleep, but they never really become woody. It's just soft wood down in the bottom. They rejuvenate themselves each year, and you can cut out some of the older growth on them. This is a Helleborus, or Lenten rose. This is absolutely one of my favorite. I'm going to cover these in a lot of detail over the course of the next month as they start blooming. I have a nursery I'm actually going to tour that's full of these. Absolutely beautiful. One of my absolute favorites. Bloom when it's very, very cold. Start blooming about now in late January in my area. They're not yet this year because we're just really, really cold, and they bloom throughout most of the early to mid-spring. Fantastic. This is a Heuchera right here. A lot of different varieties of these. This is a purple foliage one. But again, it stays evergreen like this, but it looks extremely delicate. It looks like something that would either die to the ground or not be perennial, honestly. But these are extremely rugged and tough plants. All of the things I just showed you are very cold hardy. They can grow up to zone 5. I'm in zone 7, so I'm not worried about planting these plants this time of year in my area at all. Perennials that are, you know, just barely hardy in my area, something that only went up to zone 7, like a salvia or something like that. Typically, I'll wait for them to start breaking dormancy in the spring, or wait till my frost-free date is here, which is about April 15th for me, if they've already come up some. Maybe somebody had them in a greenhouse and they were forcing them a little bit. I wouldn't want to take it out of that greenhouse and then have a frost on it. So the things you see me planting in this bed today in January are substantially hardier than the area that I'm in. That's why I'm comfortable planting them. I'm leaving several holes in this bed to plant some things that are hardy in my area, but I'm a little nervous about planting them in January. I'll wait until March or April and plug those into this bed. So I'm going to walk around real quick with the camera like I did with the shrubs, show you how I placed a few of these things in the bed. I won't bore you again with sticking them in the ground because I do that in so many videos, and then I'll walk around after they're in the ground and just show you how I elevate these some. I'm actually going to leave all of these perennials, especially that ground cover phlox. It's so low to the ground. If I planted it flush to the ground, it's really, really hard to mulch around it and not end up with mulch falling in on top of it. So I'm going to leave it up a little bit, and I'll show you that after I get them planted. It's super sunny out here this morning after a couple days of rain. One thing I wanted to show you is I actually added this sunshine ligustrum from the Southern Living plant collection right there in the center of the bed. That's the last shrub I had put in. I forgot I actually had it. I had it in a container for a winter display that I had. And I was gonna go and buy one somewhere else, but I remember that one and I got it in, so I've got that yellow foliage there. A big change that happened since the last video I shot is I took about 6 trees out of here, and I think that this corner right here is gonna end up quite a bit more sunny. I think the sun is gonna sneak in here sometime after lunch and really cook this corner. So I'm kind of adapting to that and putting sunnier things into that corner than I originally thought. I'm putting some stepping stones in here to get to my faucet, and I'm gonna paint that piece of PVC right there, either black or dark green or something with a spray can before I mulch this bed. This is a fern right here. This is a Japanese holly fern, and I've never seen this thing damaged. This winter has been quite severe. I think it's gonna need to move. I think it's gonna end up too sunny here for that now on this corner, but I'm going to wait for it to put some new growth on in the spring. I'm just gonna leave it there right this minute and then pop it out of the ground as soon as I see some new growth on it and put it in a shadier space. I've got 2 areas of Ajuga right here, and I don't know if you can see that right there. I'm gonna divide these up and use them in some various places in my yard, and some other perennials will go into this space. But again, these 3 pieces, I'm just gonna kind of leave them here until the temperature totally moderates, and then I've got some plans for the things I'm gonna plant here. On this corner, I have 3 Phlox and 2 Carex going in there. You'll notice I use a lot of yellow foliage. Yellow foliage tends to make all the flowering things you use and the green foliage things you use really quite a bit more showy. All the shrubs I had planted in the other video were pretty much green, and that sunshine ligustrum will definitely help with that. Somewhere right about the middle of this thing, this way is definitely gonna be shady. And I think, like I say now, this is gonna be a little bit more sunny. I got these Helleborus tucked up in here, and they'll start blooming pretty soon. I have a white variety and a red variety and a pink variety. And they have a way of crossing over time, and you'll get different variations of them in the garden over time. This is Hosta here. This variety is called Guacamole. It's variegated, and the variegation in the center of the leaf is a green color. It's a green variegation, and it's really quite striking. That's why it's called Guacamole. I put these 3 Heuchera on this corner. This one kind of is a caramel color, and these are purple here. That should be nice in that space, and these will stay evergreen year round. Sliding up here toward the top, I put 3 of these Carex from the Southern Living Plant Collection right here to get that gold foliage. And there's 5 ground cover Phlox right here, 2 different colors. There's some purple and some red. And if they don't look great together, I actually have some whites. I may switch one of those colors out for white later. I haven't seen this red. I don't know how red it is, so I don't know how they're gonna look together. Like I always say, these things are just puzzle pieces. When these are blooming in a month from now, if I don't like that color combination, I'll just switch these 3 out for white and use those somewhere else. I put 1 additional Carex right there, and this is gonna give me these little yellow spots of color. And I also do the same thing in this container. When I get to that point, I will put something gold or variegated into that container as well. So all of these items are in the ground right here. Again, I'm gonna put these Encore Azaleas right here. I have a plan for that. A nice little gold splash there. And this corner right here really is gonna be the most finished thing in this bed when I'm done, other than, you know, planting something else in that container. Just so happens all the things that are going up in this area are hardy enough for me to get them in the ground, or not growing right now, so they wouldn't be damaged by me putting them in the ground. But this should look great. Let me show you up here at this corner. This 1 Phlox right here. I have left him up. You can actually see about 1 inch of the roots up above that. It's supposed to be a little cold tonight, and I'm not mulching until tomorrow. So I'm gonna take this leaf litter right here and just put it up around it, and then I'll pull it back and mulch it tomorrow. But you definitely wanna leave those things up just a little bit. Otherwise, if you put 3 or 4 inches of mulch around it, even if you're careful not to put it on it, it'll end up kicked in it or whatever. You'll end up with mulch on the top of them. So that's the best way to go about that. So thank you very much for watching this 4th part of this video series. The next part, I will be mulching this space, and it should really be that last final touch, which makes all this plant material kind of stand out and not be blended in with these leaves and that kind of thing like they are right now. So don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for future videos. Thanks again.